I used to dread moments like that. In this situation, a parent storms into your office yelling and frustrated about their child's grade. We go over the rubric, we go over the evidence that justifies the grade on the assignment, and to include how everything was consistent with division policy. So everything justified, everything documented, and yet the parent still is in disagreement. They get even more upset, they stand up, and threaten to call the superintendent as they slam the door on their way out. And even though everything was done right, that knot in your stomach, that knot starts to get tighter because of how this could play out. If you've ever had a moment like this, you know the concern itself isn't what you're worried about. What you're worried about is what happens next. I know I used to walk back to my desk thinking, is this about to get blown out of proportion? How is this going to sound when it reaches the superintendent? Am I about to be viewed as the problem, even when we followed the policy? Those thoughts, that waiting, that uncertainty, that's the part that drained me. Until I learned one move that completely changed these kind of situations and how they play out. And today I'm going to share with you what to do before the superintendent ever gets that call, so you can protect your reputation, stop the anxiety from taking over, and keep concerns like this from turning into something bigger than what they need to be. Now, here's the reality many of us are living in. We're already carrying enough pressure from the day-to-day workload, the competing demands. I mean, you're one issue away from the wind being knocked out of you. And then a parent reaches out, they're upset about their child's grade, and they are not satisfied with how you respond. So much that they threaten to call the superintendent on you. When this happens, even when you know the teacher followed policy, your mind begins to race. You start to question if this is about to become something bigger than it needs to be. And all that we want at that moment is something very simple. We don't want to bring shame to the school or the school division. We want things to de-escalate. And if we're being honest, we just want to move on without any additional drama. But here's what gets in the way of all of that. We hesitate, we wait, and ultimately we hope it just goes away. All because of the fear underneath. The fear of doing something that will backfire on us and make it all worse. But here's something that changed the game for me as a principal. One thing I knew for sure was that silence never keeps a situation small. Instead, silence creates a vacuum. And when we don't shape the narrative early, someone else eventually will, usually with emotion and not context. And that's when it clicked for me. Hesitating and worrying wasn't benefiting me in any way. It was just creating space for the story to travel without context. So instead of debating over whether or not I should go ahead and call first, I started asking, if this is going to move up the chain, whether that's to my director, my assistant superintendent, or the superintendent, I'd rather they hear it from me first with full context. Now, let me slow all of this down for you to make it practical. I'm not talking about over-explaining. I'm not talking about you panic. And it definitely doesn't mean you throw anyone under the bus. What it means is this. You give a factual, brief heads up so that nothing lands as a surprise. And that heads up could sound something like this. You pick up the phone, give them a call and say, hey, look, wanted to give you a quick heads up about a situation. I met with a parent today who was upset about a grade that their child got on an assignment. We walked through the rubric. I even showed evidence to justify the grade, and I explained how the grading was aligned with division policy. Parent got even more upset, and they shared that they may reach out. However, I wanted you to have some context directly from me in case you hear about it. That's it. Enough context so if the call does come, they already understand what actually happened. And here's what that one move actually changes. It puts you ahead of the narrative. It gives your supervisor context early, so they're not trying to play catch up or fill in the blanks on their own. It keeps the teacher from being misrepresented before the full picture is given, and it keeps you from having to untangle a version of the story that's already taken on a life of its own. And I want to be clear though, this isn't about covering yourself. This is about deciding who gets to tell the story first. We see this play out all the time in schools, especially when something hits the news. You have a headline that breaks, a clip circulates, and before the full context ever shows up, people already have their minds made up. So by the time the facts come out, the narrative is already set. But Calling your supervisor first keeps an incomplete version of that story from becoming the version that drives what happens next. Because, for me, I know me. I'm the type of person who will run 10 different versions of how this could play out through my head all day. But once you've made that call, you're no longer sitting there worrying about what's coming next. So now you know how to handle these situations before they blow up. You know how to get ahead of the narrative and stop a concern like this from turning into something bigger than what it needs to be. And I hope you got something out of this video. If you did, do me a favor, show me some thumbs up love and hit the like button. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any future videos like this. And until next time, lead with impact, and more importantly, protect your peace. You know what? I can't believe after I explained everything, this parent walked out of here, yelled at me, slammed my door, and walked down the hallway cursing in my main office. I can't believe it. I can't believe this just happened. But I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make the phone call first before this narrative spins out of control and it doesn't have the right context. That's exactly what I'm gonna do.